A very good morning to you all. In our last class, we have seen the concept of polymorphism in C++. We defined the polymorphism as uh, having many forms, isn't it? An entity or an object or a function or a data member is going to behave differently at different situations. I have even given the real time example of a human being, how he is going to behave differently at different stages of his life. Okay, like a father, like a son, like a child, like a brother, okay, uh, like an husband, like a grandfather. At different stages of his life, he's going to behave differently. Okay, the person is same, just his roles, what he's going to play are different. So this is the best example for polymorphism. If we relate that thing to our programming, we are going to have the same function name in multiple classes, same member function in multiple classes. Okay, so yeah, if we are taking same function name in multiple classes, how we can call that function based on the base class object, based on the derived class object, and based on the base class pointer, these things we have seen. So when you have the relationship of inheritance between two classes and you have a same function name between the two classes, we are calling this concept as function overriding. That also I have explained in my previous video. Function overriding. When there is a function overriding, what function body you're trying to invoke, it plays a vital role. It is very important, and it is this thing you have to understand very clearly. Okay, very soon I'm going to give one example why this scenario, why this concept is having that much importance in programming. I will give an example so that you will understand. So generally what we do in this polymorphism means, in inheritance only we are expecting a member function to behave differently at different occasions or at different calls. So generally whenever we are calling the member function, the function call to the function body, there should be a linkage, isn't it? We are calling a function at one point, so suddenly what will happen when you are calling a function, the control will jump from that point to the function body, isn't it? The function will jump from that function call to the function body. There is a linkage between the function call and function body. This type of linkage, if it is happening at compile time, we call it as static linkage. We call it as static linkage or early linkage. We also have a name to it, early linkage, or we call it as uh, quickly we go to that slide. Yeah, here only. So early linkage, static linkage, or we also call it as early binding. Okay, generally this kind of linkage, it is a kind of binding between the function call and function body, so we call it as static binding, early linkage, static linkage, whatever you give. Yeah, all will give the same meaning. Whatever terminology you use, all will give you the same meaning. Okay, so static binding is nothing but if the linkage to function call to the function body is happening at the time of compilation, we call it as static binding. Clear? So the second term, second form is the dynamic binding, and we have advantage in dynamic binding over static binding in this polymorphism concept. Okay, in this polymorphism concept. Okay, so quickly, yesterday only I have given this example to you. Once again I'm just revising. So we are having a class. In that class we are taking a function with name display, isn't it? We took a function with name display. So here a, and we took display. So from this I am deriving one class, and to that class, in that class also I am taking a data member b and the function, same function name display. Okay, here and here I am taking the same function. So this is my class A and this is my class B. So when I am creating the object to class A, so AOBJ, using this AOBJ, I can access this A as well as I can access this display. These two things I can do. I can access this display. Using this AOBJ, I can access these two. Can I access any of the data members or member functions from here? No, it is not possible because there is no direct connectivity between this object and this class B. There is no direct connectivity. And whatever connectivity using this inheritance we are establishing, this is from top to bottom only. We cannot go in reverse. We cannot go in reverse. Whatever data members and member functions we have in this A class, we are going to inherit them into B class. But the member functions and data members from B class, they will not go in reverse to the base class. They will not go in reverse to the base class. That is the reason why using this AOBJ, I cannot access this B and display. Clear? So the next thing is, yeah, over here when you are inheriting, ultimately your B class will also have the public members of A class. So those public members are nothing but data member A as well as display function. Those public members are nothing but data member A and display function. These are inherited ones and these are the actual what B possesses before inheritance. What B actually possesses is nothing but B and display, and what B got inherited from A, that is nothing but A and display only. Clear? So right now if I create the object of my B class, if I create the object of my B class, how come? BOBJ. So now using this BOBJ, what I can access? Using this BOBJ, what I can access? Can I access this A? Yes, I can access this A directly without any hesitation. I can access this A directly because it is a public member got inherited from A class. Can I access this B? Yes, I can access this B as well. This is also public data member and it is actual data member of your B class. I can access that one also. Can I access this display? Yes, I can access this display. I can access this display because it is a public member function and it is a direct member function of your derived class. So I can access that one. Can I access this display? No, there is no possibility of accessing the inherited display function because of the name which we have given. So how you are trying to access this display? You have to write like this only, isn't it? BOBJ dot display only you have to write. BOBJ dot display only you have to write. But if you write, when you write like this, your compiler will get confused. Your compiler will think that you are trying to access the actual function but not the inherited function. So there is no mean to specify that you want to access the inherited display function. Okay, using this BOBJ, there is no mean to that you can specify you want to access this inherited display function. Whenever you try to access this inherited display function, your compiler will consider it as the actual function and it invokes that actual function body only. It does not invoke the inherited function body. So this is the problem. So to some extent, to solve this one, what we have done, we have created a pointer to base class. We have created a pointer to base class. How come? That I will write over here. How can we create? Yes, A star APTR. Like this I have created. A star APTR. Right now, if I store the address of AOBJ into this APTR, then what will happen? Equals to %% of AOBJ. So right now what I am doing, I am storing the address of my AOBJ, that is nothing but A class object, into this pointer. So right now my APTR is pointing to the base class only, base class object only. So using this APTR, what I can access? Using this APTR, what I can access? Can I access this A? Yes, of course I can access. Can I access this display? Yes, of course I can access. But yeah, during the compile time, as I told you, during the compile time, your derived class is completely unknown to the base class. Your derived class is completely unknown to the base class. So that is the reason why you cannot access this B and this display when your APTR is pointing right now my APTR is pointing to base class object, isn't it? So APTR, it is pointing to here. it is pointing to here right now, as I stored the address of AOBJ into that APTR. Clear? So I cannot access my B and display function from the derived class, from the child class. Clear? From the subclass. Understood? So right now what I will do, in order to access the inherited member, what I am doing, APTR equals to and percent of BOBJ. I am storing the address of B class object into the A class base pointer. Base class pointer. I am storing the address of derived class object. So right now, what data members can I access? Can I access this A? Not possible. Why? Means now when we wrote this statement, when we wrote like this, APTR equals to and percent BOBJ, your pointer, your APTR, now it will point this BOBJ. It will not point the AOBJ. So where my APTR is going to point? APTR is going to point this one. Right now my APTR is pointing the derived class object. It is pointing the derived class object. So whatever data members or whatever member functions I can access, that will be from B class object only. I cannot have any direct access to A class object. So right now my B class object, it is having two direct members. Okay, two actual members. One is data member and one is member function, and two inherited members. Okay, two inherited members. One is data member and one is member function. Okay, so using this APTR right now, what data members I can access? Can I access the actual data members or can I access the inherited data members? Means I can access only the inherited data members. I cannot access the actual data members. The reason, at the time of compilation, my base class is unaware of the derived class. My base class is unaware of the derived class. That is the reason why your APTR is completely unknown to this B and this display. Okay, previously using this BOBJ, we can access only this B and this display. We cannot access this display, because whenever you are trying to access the inherited display, your compiler got confused and it executed the actual display only. But in this case, when I am using the base pointer to access my display function, I can access only the inherited ones. I cannot access the actual ones. The reason, at the time of compilation, my base class pointer is unaware of the derived class. That is the reason why using this base class pointer, even though it is pointing to the derived class object, I can access only this A and this display, the inherited data member, inherited member function. Right now, once again there is a complication. Once again there is a problem. Using this base class pointer also, I cannot access the derived class display function directly. Okay, using the derived class object, I cannot access the inherited display. Using this base class pointer, I cannot access the actual function, actual data member function, actual member function. Clear? So still, to some extent, we got an option of either calling the actual function or calling the inherited function, but both at a time we are not doing. So maybe you might have got this doubt, why there is a need to use the same function name both in the base class as well as in derived class. What is the purpose of using them? Can't we use a different function name over here so that we can avoid this complete ambiguity? Instead of going to the same name both in base class as well as in subclass, can't we take some different name inside derived class? That's it, right? If we take the different name over here, the complete ambiguity has been gone. If we take some display2 instead of simply display, if I take display2, that means I'm removing the function overriding. There is no overriding because both my functions are with different names. They are not having the same name and same parameters. Both my functions are different names, isn't it? Different names. So complete ambiguity has been removed. Now, Using this BOBJ only, using this direct object of my derived class only, I can access this display function by using the name, and I can access this display2 function by using the name. So right now, how can I access this display2? BOBJ, sorry, BOBJ, simply what we have to put, dot display2. So like this, I can access the inherited member function as well if the names are different. If the names are different. But if the function overriding is there, that means if the names are same, whenever you are trying to invoke, whenever you are trying to call the inherited function, whenever you are trying to call the overridden function, your compiler is considering the actual function instead of overridden function. Isn't it? That is the problem. So why there is a need to use the same function name both in the base class and in derived class? I will give one simple real-time situation. With that, you will understand the importance of having the same names both in base class and the derived class, and the importance of invoking them whenever it is required, and the importance of invoking them whenever it is required. So quickly I will take a new slide. Assume an IT company. In Hyderabad, we have an IT company. So generally, how the work is, I mean, how the workflow will go inside an IT company, you might be aware. Maybe most of your cousin brothers, sisters, elder brothers, they are right now working in MNCs or IT companies. They will be working in shifts. Already, you might have some idea about it. So generally what will happen in an IT sector, in an IT company, in an IT organization, in the sense they will form teams, isn't it? In order to solve a big project, they will divide that big project into small modules, and every module is being given to a specific team. So they will work like teams in an organization. So for every team, so let us assume they have a big project, a company, IT company, I will take on top. So this is my IT company. So this IT company, they got a project. So this IT company, it got a project. So project is, let us assume some bank project they got. So bank project they got. So now this bank project, it is very big, huge. So what they have done, they have divided that bank project, big project, into three modules. So three subparts. So module 1, module 2, like module 3. So now, yeah, this is module 1, this is module 2, and this is module 3. Like this we have module 1, module 2, and module 3. So module 1 is given to team lead, team 1. Team 1. Module 2 is been given to team 2. And module 3 is been given to team 3. So like this, three different teams, they are implementing the project, they are developing the project separately. So by this division, we have many advantages, isn't it? Work can go parallelly. Okay, all the three modules, they are, I mean, they are under coding process or they are under development process parallelly. So likewise, we can divide the work and we can run the work parallelly. So instead, if they consider this bank project as a single entity and start doing the work, only one process they can initiate, and only one process can start, and only one process can end. It is a time consuming process. So generally what they will do, the big project, they will divide into smaller modules, and each module that can run parallelly, so that they can solve the issues very easily inside those projects, I mean inside those modules, and they can finish those modules in short amount of time and very effectively, we can say. So now team 1 is working on module 1, team 2 is working on module 2, and team 3 is working on module 3. So quickly, what this team 1, team 2, team 3 will have internally, in the sense, internally team 1 will have one team lead. I will put TL for him, team lead. So this team 2 is also going to have one TL, and this team 3 is also going to have one TL. So internal to the under this team leader, lot of employees are going to work. isn't it? Like, let us assume that here he's having some three employees, employee 1 and employee 2 and employee 3. Under team lead 1, how many employees? 3 employees are working. Under team lead 2, let us assume that again here also like 3 employees are working. 1, then we have 2, then we have 3. Here also 3 employees are working. Okay, so again like this we have, and in team lead under this team 4 we have only 2 employees. Let us assume like this. So based on the velocity, or based on the what we call volume of the module, they will assign the team members, and like this they are working. So right now, yeah, this module 1, in order to solve, team lead will have some basic idea, isn't it? So whatever employees in that team are doing, everything must be known to the team lead. Whatever employees are doing, whatever employees are coding the project, everything must be known to the team lead, and they have to follow the instructions of team lead, and whatever team lead has initiated the work, that work only they have to follow, and that work only they have to complete. It is the responsibility of the team members 1, 2, 3 to follow the instructions given by the team lead. So generally, in order to give those instructions, what the team lead will do means he will take one class. He will take one class. Let us assume class team lead. Class team lead. And he will put some basic idea into that. So let us say if they are designing a car. Sorry, already we discussed banking, isn't it? Bank application, right? So bank organization we discussed. So that bank organization only we will consider. Bank project only we will consider. So in every bank, what basic things we are going to have? We are going to have add account. So he will give the function name like add account. So A must be small. Add account. He will write a function like add account. So something like this. Then delete account. Okay. Then deposit. Then withdraw. These are some of the basic functionalities that we can see inside a bank. Like this, he will write the class. Like this, he will write the class. And yeah, he will instruct the team members that team member 1, team member 2, team member 3, that they have to inherit this team lead class. They have to inherit this TL class, and whatever functions they are going to write, they should not use their own functions, isn't it? They should not use their own functions. If they use their own functions, again there is a problem for the team leader to remember the logic names, because where the team members are going to put the logic, inside the functions only we are going to put the logic. Inside the functions only we are going to put the code. If the team members are going to use their own names for the functions, again it is the responsibility of the team leader. It is a burden on the team leader to remember those function names. Those function names. So simply what the team lead will do means he will instruct his employees, he will instruct his team members to use the same function name whatever he has given inside this TL class, inside this base class. It will act like a base class. It will act like a base class. Now what the team members will do means they will write their own class, and they will inherit this their own class. Like team member 1, let us assume that team member 1 is writing his class, so he will inherit publicly from TL class, public TL. So now whatever data members we have, whatever member functions we have over here, all those will get inherited into his own class. So now it is the responsibility of the team member, it is the responsibility of team member 1 how he is going to write the definitions for these functions. How he is going to write the definitions for these functions. Ultimately, end of the day, what they will do means the team leader will check all the codes, of the functions from team member A, team member 2, team member 3, likewise. All the codings he will check, and then he will do the analysis on that code, and whatever code he feels efficient, whatever code he feels good enough, that code he will act into the actual project, that code he will add into the actual project. So in that sense, taking the same name from base class to the derived class will reduce the burden, will reduce the problem of remembering more than one function name. If here class 1, team member 1, he uses his own classes, his own member functions, means again he has to give the list of member functions to the team leader. Okay, isn't it? Again he has to give the list of member functions to the team leader so that he can open that list of member functions and check the coding. Instead, if he also going to use the same member function names from the base class to the derived class, okay, from the team lead class to the team member class, the ambiguity will be reduced, isn't it? The ambiguity will get reduced. Right now, doing this will also improve the efficiency. How means, again, if the team leader wants to invoke any of the member functions over here, any of the member functions, he no need to remember the member function name, or he no need to remember the class name of the team member. Simply what he will do means, he will ask the team member to produce the object of his class. Don't give the class name, don't give the method description, function description to me, just give your object to me. I will check what you have written inside your code, what you have, whether your code is generating the proper result or not, just by making use of your object. So what he will do, he will create a uh, pointer to his own class. So he will create a pointer to his own class. Let us assume that, so this class 1, team member 1 has implemented all these methods. Whatever methods the team leader has declared, all those methods the team member 1 has been implemented. So right now what he will give, he will create an object 1 equals to, sorry, 1 space obj1, obj1. Like this he will create one object, and he will pass this object to the team leader. He will pass the object to the team lead. He only has to give the object itself. He no need to mention the function names as well, because he is using the same functions. He is overriding those functions in his own class. So right now what the team lead will do, yeah, he will create a pointer to his own class, that is tl star, okay, tl star tlptr, team lead pointer, team lead pointer. Now inside this tlptr, what he will do, tlptr, he will store the address of this obj1 equals to and percent obj1. Right now using this obj1, he can access all the inherited members, all the inherited members from the base class to the derived class. So whatever declarations he has given, all those implementations this obj1 is giving, isn't it? Whatever declarations team leader has given, all those implementations this obj1 is giving. So what he will do right now, using this tlptr, he will invoke the same functions. Using this tlptr, he will invoke all these functions: tlptr arrow this add account, tlptr arrow this delete account. Like this he will invoke all the functions and check the functionality and do the testing. And if he is giving, if team member 1 is giving effective results when compared to team member 2, team member 3, he will use the coding of team member 1. Or if team member 2 is giving effective result, then he will go with the team member 2. Likewise, he will do the analysis and he will select the code. So in this manner, the reduction in work will be done in an organization, okay, when we are using this function overriding concept. So in this way, this will be helpful. So again, our discussion, we stopped over here at this point, and we said that there is no mean that we can access both the functions directly. So when we are using directly the derived class object, we are invoking the actual member function. And when we are using the base class pointer, we are invoking the inherited member function. Isn't it? There is no mean that we can access both the functions at the same time. There is no mean that we can access both the functions at the same time. So generally, yeah, this problem also we can solve. Generally, what will happen means, Yeah, team leader, he will only initiates the work, he will not write the actual coding. So what he will do, he will simply put the names to the functions, he will simply give the names to the functions, and he will not put any coding for that one. He simply gives the names to the function and he will not put any coding for that one. And whenever it is required, he simply invokes the member functions from the team members classes and check the see the coding and check the efficiency. So uh, to get that one, we have the concept called virtual function. So virtual functions, what they will do means, yeah, here virtual functions, what they will do means, instead of doing the binding at the compile time, binding, what we said, the linkage from the function call to the function body, the linkage from the function call to the function body, we call it as binding. We call it as binding. So early binding means binding at compile time. So late binding, we do late binding. To get the accurate results, we do late binding. The late binding, what it will do, it will tell the compiler, it will signal the compiler that do perform the binding at runtime. Okay, do perform the binding at runtime. Okay, so here if you read, a virtual function is a function in a base class that is declared using the keyword virtual. So virtual functions generally where we use inside the base class only, we have to differentiate the we have to differentiate the member function as a virtual member function. Okay, where do we do this differentiation means inside the base class only. Inside derived class we will not do anything. So by using this virtual function concept, we are signaling the compiler that to perform the laid binding, to perform the binding, to perform that linkage at the time of execution of the program, and don't perform early binding, don't perform static binding, static linkage at the time of compilation. Clear? So using the virtual function, we are performing binding at runtime. That is nothing but your late binding. Okay, and you can read this blue box over here. The selection of the function to be called at any given point in the program need to be done at the runtime based on the object reference. Clear? Based on the object reference. This is referred to as dynamic linkage or late binding. This is referred to as dynamic linkage or late binding. Generally, when we use functions, we do have a function name, function call, and function body. Function call and function body, isn't it? What do we have? So let us say I'm using a user defined function with name add member. Add member. So for this function, if I do like this, it is a function call. So if I put like this, add member of open bracket close bracket, this is the function body. So the linkage, whenever it sees the this function call, the control will jump from here to here, the control will jump from here to here. This kind of binding, we call it as, yeah, this kind of binding in normal scenario, in general scenario, it will happen at compile time, isn't it? It will happen at compile time, it will occur at compile time. So such binding we call it as compile time. Okay, linkage or static linkage, or we also called as early binding. Early binding. So if you do the same at the time of run, how we are doing that? By simply using virtual functions. If you do the binding at runtime, what we call them? Runtime linkage. Okay, okay, dynamic linkage, or in short we call it as dynamic binding. Dynamic binding, it is one of the important question that you have to understand, the difference between dynamic binding and static binding, or the difference between early binding and late binding, the difference between early binding and late binding, we also call it as late binding. Okay, the linkage from function call to the function body, whatever we are performing, if we are performing at the time of compilation, we call it as compile time linkage, static linkage, early binding. If you do the same at the time of execution of your program, at the time of running your program, then we call it as runtime linkage, dynamic binding, late binding, all these just the synonyms. Okay, so this understanding is important. For in order to do the static binding or compile time linkage, no need to do anything. It is by default. It is by default. By default, you will get the compile time binding, compile time linkage. But in order to get the runtime polymorphism, that is nothing but runtime linkage, runtime dynamic binding, late binding, we have to make use of what? Virtual functions. We have to use virtual functions. This understanding is important. This thing you have to understand. So static binding is by default, dynamic binding is with the help of virtual functions. Okay, early binding is by default, late binding is with the help of virtual functions. So in this way you can remember. So quickly go to the slide. So this understanding is important, and quickly we will see how if you do the how if you use virtual functions, you are able to access the actual members of derived class with the help of base class pointer. So far what we said, it is not possible at the time of compilation. The reason, at compile time, base class is completely unaware of the derived class. But using these virtual functions, when we do late binding, your base class will become aware of the derived class. So you can access the derived class data members as well. You can access the derived class data members as well. Quickly, we'll see one simple example on these virtual functions, and I will explain how these virtual functions are going to help us in achieving the runtime polymorphism. So quickly I will open my Dev CPP compiler. So the same classes on that day I have explained, right? The same classes I am going to make use, and simply I will add that virtual keyword to my function, to my member function inside the base class. So I will go to that example here to give the idea of what we are trying to do in coding. So over here I explained. See, in this, when I am creating APTR and storing the address of BOBJ, when I am creating APTR and storing the address of BOBJ, I said my APTR is pointing the B object BOBJ, even though I can access only this A and this display. I cannot access this B and this display. The reason, because at compile time, APTR is unaware of this BOBJ, unaware of the content of this BOBJ. But if we do the runtime polymorphism, we can even invoke this display also. We can even invoke this display by making use of APTR. So that I want to show now. That I want to show now. So Dave, let me just open this application. See, coding you have to practice a lot, and this DSA, it is very difficult subject. And still we are in first unit. As we proceed further, as we get into some data structure concept, everything will confuse you. If you don't practice the things at this stage, everything will confuse you. So pay more attention, as it is a core subject, as it is a programming subject in your second year. It is a very very important point in your BE stage, I can say. So give more preference to this DSA. So over here, those same classes I am going to write hash include iostream. Okay, then using namespace std. Okay, then I have to take my class A followed by public parameter A and public display function, and the return type to this display is void, and it is not even going to take the parameters, so the parameter list is void, and I will write the coding here itself. Yeah, two are very same. Writing the code inside the class or writing the code outside the class, there is no difference. Just to avoid the ambiguity, complexity of if you have more number of functions, the code will get clumsy, isn't it? You will not get anything by seeing the code. That is the reason why we are writing the definitions outside. But right now I have only one single function, that is display function. So I'm keeping the code inside the class itself. Okay. So what I have to do here, I have to print class A data members. Class A data members, that is only one member we have right now, that is A. So put that data member and close this class. So next, second class I'm writing class B, that I'm inheriting from A class publicly. Okay. So inside this also, inside this A class, put the data member B. Okay. Take the display function void. Okay. Then print cout of class B data member. Class B data members colon bu print. Okay, just to have some differentiation, when you are getting both the lines, you just give end line in the second phrase. That's it. Save the program. Yeah, before saving, yeah, we even have to write the main function int main of void. Okay, so now you save this. This is with virtual function we are achieving, isn't it? Virtual func dot cpp. Save the program. So right now inside this main class, if I create the object of A class, I can access this A data member, I can access this display function. If I create the object of B class, I can access this B data member, I can access this display function. That we know. So in order to access this display function from the base class, what I am doing, I am creating the pointer to this base class, isn't it? Pointer to this base class. A star APTR. A class pointer APTR. So right now, if I store the address of A class object, so that is AOBJ, it is a normal object. So if I store the address of APTR equals to ampersand AOBJ. So right now, what data members I can access? I can access only the data members of base class, because my APTR is now pointing the base class. So this we already know. But if I put the B class object, BOBJ, so what data members I can access? Now this is BOBJ, as you can see. Now my APTR is pointing to B class, BOBJ, B class object. So what data members I can access? I can, even though it is pointing the BOBJ, I can access only the data members of base class. Only the data members of base class, because my base class is unaware of the derived class members and member functions at the time of compilation, at the time of static linkage, at the time of early binding. So whatever binding, whatever linkage here I am doing, it is static linkage only. It is early linkage only. So that is the reason why when I try to call APTR of display, APTR of display, this will invoke what? This will invoke the base class display function. Even though my APTR is pointing the derived class object, it will invoke the base class display function only. You see, so first of all, we have to initialize the data members, isn't it? We have to initialize the data members. So using this BOBJ, I will initialize the data members. So that is BOBJ dot, or Yeah, BOBJ dot A equals to some 30. I have initialized the A value inside BOBJ as 30. This A got inherited from A to B. So now if I execute, yeah, this display function, what it will do, it will call this display body from A class. Call this display body from A class, and it will list, it will print class A data members A value as 30. Quickly see that one. I'm compiling the program. Hopefully there are no mistakes. Yeah, there are no mistakes. So quickly go execute and run the program just to see the output. Yeah, as you can see, class A data member 30 we got. So it is invoking the data member, I mean the display function from base class. Class A data member. Here we have class B data member. You have to observe the difference. Here we have class A data member and here we have class B data member. So right now the display function, even though you are invoking it using the base class pointer, when it is pointing to the derived class object, it is invoking the base class function only. It is not invoking the derived class function. So to invoke the derived class function with respect to the object, because my APTR is pointing to the BOBJ, isn't it? So when I'm doing like this, I'm expecting my APTR to invoke the display function from the derived class, not from the base class. So to do that one, what I have to do, I have to perform the late binding. I have to perform the dynamic linkage, dynamic binding. So that is runtime polymorphism. Okay, runtime shifting, runtime call to the method. Okay, so how I can do means simply by placing the virtual keyword before this definition. Virtual keyword. You just put virtual keyword before this definition, function definition. Right now, save this. Now you compile. Yeah, just wait, because a a class, a parameter is initialized. Yes, it is initialized. So right now it will invoke, yeah, this BOBJ also we have to initialize, right? So BOBJ dot B also we have to initialize, because this time it is going to print the B value, because it is invoking the B class display function. As it is invoking the B class display function, it will print the B value. Okay, it will print the B value. So that value we have to initialize. I have done the initialization to 40. Quickly we see what complication we get. See, there is no complication, so I am executing and I am getting the output. See, B class. I'm getting the display function from B class, derived class, and I'm getting the B value as 40. Without that virtual keyword, static linkage is happening. That is the reason why it is invoking the display function from base class. Over there, we got class A data member we got previously. By keeping that virtual keyword, we are doing the runtime polymorphism. We are doing the dynamic polymorphism. We are doing the dynamic linkage, late binding. That is the reason why I'm getting the function call, function definition from derived class, not from the base class. That is the reason why I got 40 over here. That is the reason why I got 40 over here, and this display function got invoked from derived class, not from the base class. So in general scenarios, who is responsible? This is the concept of virtual functions. Virtual functions. There is another concept called pure virtual function. Okay, pure virtual function. I will let you know the importance of this pure virtual function, and then we will see the example as well. So in general scenario, what will happen means, yeah, here only this example I will go. Yeah, in this scenario, in an organization, as the team leader, he is going to invoke, he is going to put the declarations. Okay, add account, delete account, deposit, withdraw. He will only name those functions. He's not going to write any coding for that one, because he's not responsible for coding. He's only responsible for monitoring. If he only writing the code for those functions, he thinks that he only write efficiently, isn't it? The team leader, if he is writing the code, anybody, whoever is writing the code, he thinks that my code is an efficient code. Nobody else will write the efficient code than me. So that is the reason why what the companies will do means companies will reduce the job of coding from the team leaders. So right now team leader, what he will do, he will simply name the functions, name the data function, I mean member functions. He will not write any code for that one. So what he will do means simply declare the function and put equals to 0. Put equals to 0. So what this 0 indicates means, this 0 indicates that these functions in this class, in this TL class, these functions are not going to have any body. They are just the declarations, and all these functions are called as pure virtual functions. They need to be virtual as well as equals to 0. They need to be virtual as well as equals to 0. Then the compiler will treat these functions as bodiless functions. The compiler will treat those functions as bodiless functions. Then who will give the coding for those functions means the derived classes. Whatever derived classes you are going to derive from this base class, those derived classes are responsible for giving the coding for these pure virtual functions. Pure virtual functions are the functions, they are not going to have any body in the declared class. Where they got declared, in that declared base class, they are not going to have any body. But the responsibility of the derived classes is that they have to implement, they have to give the body to those uh, member functions. So that example we will see. So whatever example I have taken just now, with that same example only I will try to explain. See over here, inside class A, this class A is nothing but your team leader class, because class B got inherited from that class A. So now what I will do means I will remove this definition. I don't want the base class to give the definition of this display function. It has to declare only. So now I will remove this one and I will put equals to 0. So like this, it is now this declaration of virtual function is pure virtual function, is pure virtual function, as it is not going to have any body. So I have removed the complete body. Okay, I have removed the complete body. Now whatever definition B class is giving, that definition only gets executed, isn't it? Because here when you make it as virtual, late binding will happen and dynamic binding will happen, dynamic linkage will happen. So at the time of invoking the display function, only the derived class display function will get invoked. The base class display functions are untouched. The base class member functions, virtual functions are untouched. That is the reason why we made them as equals to 0. Equals to 0 means don't specify any body to those functions. Don't give any body to those functions, because the responsibility of the team leaders is to monitor the work of the team members but not the coding. So they will simply give the idea to the team members and they will sit idle until the team leader will give the code. Team members will give the code. Once the team members gives the code, he will open that code, he will inspect that code, he will check that code, he will check the efficiency of that code, and whatever he feels efficient, that he will add into the project. That code he will add into the project. Now quickly we see what output we will get. So we made the base class virtual function equals to 0. That is nothing but we made the base class member function as pure virtual function. Pure virtual function. So the binding will be late binding. So only the derived class member function will get invoked. So compile, no errors. Okay, as AOBJ, creation of AOBJ. Because that display function is an abstract function, you cannot create the object of AOBJ. So simply remove that AOBJ. You can create the pointer, but you cannot create the object because the definition is missing. Over there, one definition is missing. So how can we create the object? So right now the compilation is successful. Execute to see the output. See, that same output we will get. B class data member, that is B40 we are getting. Okay, hopefully you got some idea. Do practice from the first session to this session. You have to do the practice of all the programs, all the concepts. Then only you will understand whatever we are going to discuss any further in this DSA class. From the second unit, I am telling you it is very complicated stuff. Without the practice, without the knowledge of basic concepts, you will not understand anything over there. All these points, all these concepts, whenever it is required, I'm stressing a lot, I'm repeating a lot. The reason is DSA is a very difficult subject. The data structure implementation in terms of coding we have to do. Without the knowledge of basics, it is highly impossible to move any further. So my suggestion, don't waste the time, do practice in basics from your C to the C++. C++ is also almost only 2 3 concepts are pending. Almost all the basics we have covered. Only after this pure virtual function, we have the dynamic memory allocation, then namespaces concept, then exception handling. Only these 3 concepts are pending. Okay. In tomorrow's class, hopefully we will discuss dynamic memory allocation, how we are going to allocate the memory dynamically in C++, and after that the concept of namespaces, that is using namespace std we are writing in every program. The purpose of writing that statement you will understand over there. And after that, the exception handling, very important concept from this C++, exception handling. And with that we'll wind up this basics from your first unit. And after that, in 2 classes, we'll learn how to do the analysis of algorithms. It is completely mathematics stuff. If you are good in mathematics, there is no need to stress the concepts very much over there. The functions in mathematics, you might be having functions. Okay, doing the analysis of functions. Here also same thing. For every algorithm, we will frame one function, and based on that polynomial function equation only, we are degree of polynomial of function equation only, we are going to analyze the algorithms. It is completely mathematical stuff. You will get very easily that one, hopefully. Okay, if there is anything else that you can put in the comment section. And do subscribe the channel. Don't forget to subscribe the channel. If you have not subscribed, do it immediately, because it is very necessary to get the updates. Whatever videos I am posting on my channel, to get the updates, you have to subscribe. Okay, thank you students. We'll see in our next class the rest of the concepts.